My name is William Martinez. I'm a lending assistant, customer service representative for Happy State Bank. The most I love is working with people, and I think that we as a bank, we do that. You know, I think that's our culture. I think they go out and find those individuals that love to interact with individuals and love the conversation and love working and helping out and solving those problems that our customers can have. And I think that the culture, the helpfulness, I think that's what sets us apart.
We're ready. Let's call the meeting to order, and we'll turn it over to our city manager to go through the agenda.
Thank you, Mayor. We'll run through that, and then we'll come back and do our discussion on recommended changes or requested changes to the zoning contract. Item number 1, approval of the minutes of the last week's meeting.
Okay.
Item number 2, second and final, on the rezoning over on Farmers Avenue Border Trail. Kelly left. Vicki, any changes?
No changes.
Any questions? No calls. Item 3, 7385, second and final. This is City of Hillside Road and Linwood Drive. Changes? Comments? Calls? Any questions? Well, moving right along. Consent agenda. Item A, annual purchase of ammunition.
You purchased it this one for you?
We'll purchase very small odd lots throughout the year, but generally just one big purchase. Do it off the buy board and get a bigger discount than what we're able to get by bidding it. Item B, flash. And of course, Excel now sells on contract all of that material to a single company that's been with ours for several years. They take it, crush it, grade it out, and it's from whom we buy.
You're getting the top ash. So there's top ash and bottom ash for what you use.
Ours is purchased by the gradation, by the size of the granules. I don't know which of the two that is. It's actually been crushed and sieved before we buy it.
It's the top ash.
Probably.
We use it at Boy Scouts. It sure works. It's like concrete.
Yeah. You get it wet and rolled, it is.
How do Boy Scouts use it?
On the roads. We did 15 years ago, and they're still good.
What badge is that?
Road badge.
The road badge.
Civil engineering merit badge. Item C, continuing the bus stop improvements. This is for both regular bus stops and benches and shelters.
Can I ask a question about that? Kind of calls about, people get on the bus and they get up and say, what's the provisions? Is there any?
There's not, we've not ever provided trash cans at those bus stops.
Is that all we pick up just nearby neighbors come pick it up?
When our route supervisors go by, if it's there going off, they'll pick that up and try to clean it up. And stuff will stay in the shelters. They can get to those.
Actually, the people on the border pick it up.
Doing this depending on the wind direction.
Why can't we provide trash cans?
Well, you can.
And labor intensive.
You'll have to add equipment and manpower to go by and take care of those small cans.
How many bus stops are there total?
80 something that'll actually have a stop or a bench. Very low 100s total.
I have a person who, on a regular basis, sends me photographs of trash.
Maybe they can send us a picture of the people.
Yeah, that would be better.
You're talking $50,000-$60,000 for a trash can each one.
Those metal ones, heavy metal ones, like they're used in the parks now, are around $300 each. And I don't think buying the cans would really be the issue. It would be that you're going to have to manually go by and empty.
Is there trash on buses?
Yes.
Yes. So it's the bus expert.
You wonder why they couldn't be on the buses.
because they got all their
Well,
bags.
it's sort of like a small bag, but there is a disposal process.
On a bus, we take the trash with you.
Yeah, I was going to say, for the time, that's not.
Just,
There we go, there we go.
I'm tired of voting on something. Because of
Probably soda pop.
two Coca-Colas.
Outlaw.
Hey, knock them off.
More regulation.
What you did, New York.
It's not an easy problem to solve when you have different people using this. Just trying to think outside the box.
We've got cans at the, the bus transfer points, but not actually out on the routes.
Okay.
Item D, emergency power generator. This is for the airport terminal. This group may know that the airport terminal itself has never had a generator. It's lived all these years on a dual feed coming in from SPS. We have had very few failures, although we have had some. When we did the terminal construction project, at the same time, all of the wiring, all of the switching gear, and so forth to accommodate this generator was installed. The project didn't have the funding in it at the time to buy a generator. We subsequently budgeted for it. That's what you see here today. We also changed the specification from a natural gas to a diesel generator, and that's why this one came in at so much less than the budget. Of course, the remaining funds will go back into the airport and be used at the airport, so we're pretty pleased with this.
Now, this is the terminal that we run the lights around the backup generator.
Correct. The maintenance facility, the fire station, and the runway lighting systems are all on different generator circuits. Some of those also have the dual feeds in addition to that. And then the FAA equipment out there is on a backup system that they provide.
Or you still have to do a feed.
It just brings it to mind. When we bought the building from Athens for EOCs, there was a huge, nice, pretty generator there. I haven't noticed if it's still there. Is it ours?
It was running Friday when the storm hit. We lost power over there. Yes, it's ours.
Okay. It was a nice one.
Yeah, it was part of the deal. That was part of the negotiations when we renewed the contract that allowed them to have that 30-day out for when their building was finished. In exchange, one of the things we got in exchange for that was that generator. That generator is sized to run the entirety of that building because of the operations they had in it. So we're very pleased to have that. It has been used more than we might think in the short time that we've had it. We hope that getting those utilities underground will help with that. But no, just when the first blow came through, we lost power over there. Right
How long were you without?
there.
Seconds, as the generator came on.
Yeah, the battery system carries until the generator's up and running. But it goes through that entire sequence in probably 60 seconds or less. Most of what you'll notice is the lights.
Okay.
Yeah, there's only I don't remember if it's one of every 3 or one of every 2 of the lights that are on the backup on the batteries. So you'll see the lights dim, and then when the generator takes the load, everything comes back on. Both for the EOC and for the ComStream.
That's good, because they need to have that power.
They do.
Let
Is
people
that-
know what's happening.
Are those by natural gas? Is that what
Diesel.
runs those? Diesel. So you've got tanks.
Yeah, there's a tank, as part of those generators have a self-contained tank on them. We started making the conscious switch to diesel several years ago because we now have the capability of bringing diesel fuel to them. The other thing that has been learned from other disasters, when you have your natural gas-powered generators, if you're in the area that gets hit, the first thing that happens is a gasket shut because of safety.
Yeah.
This building's generator is natural gas.
The water plant, I noticed the new pump station is gas.
There's actually both up there. Our big portables, of course, are diesel. It's
Gas. Diesel, yeah. Okay.
Item E, pre-coated aggregate. This, of course, is what used to be white rock, now is black rock, that we buy and provide free of charge to a small portion of our residents every summer in the residential seal coat program. and it has started jumping on us price-wise.
That's a pretty tough
Supply
line.
and demand.
Yeah, and we're buying a little more, but it's the unit price that went up. They have learned that if they'll buy that and stockpile it, let it sit for a while, it seems to work better when it's time to spread it, rather than just buying it and taking it straight to the jobs. Item F, license and hold harmless assignment and estoppel agreement. This is for your courtyard area out there, Fisk building, and it's assignment due to some work they're doing on some refinancing. So it changes nothing other than the names that will be on those documents. Item G, approval of the City of Amarillo's participation in the PEB Trust. And today we have Dean here with us and several experts to take us through G and H. And then we'll stand for any questions that you might have on those. Brian?
Brian, you're up. All right. Easy enough. I'm Brian Whitworth. I am with First Southwest. We are administrator for the PEB Trust. We've got a short set of presentations. We also have them as well. Actually, they handed me more than there are people who take So I think everyone on the commission knows, but I'll just in case mention it, that Dean is on the board of a group called PEB Trust, and I'll talk a bit about that. It was designed for retiree medical pre-funding for public entities in Texas. And so if you go to the first page, the overview of it, it is set up as a public entity. It's a pool of public entities, including some other places like Fort Houston, Huntsville, Permian Basin Community Center, City of FAR. There's some others in progress as well. And it provides, in a manner similar to like TML does for pensions, a place for you to put your money for pre-funding for retiree medical in the same way that TML does this for pensions. It's irrevocable in the same sense that TML is irrevocable for pensions. So money you put in can only be used for this purpose. You put it in for retiree medical. We've heard these types of questions elsewhere. Somebody wants to build a municipal pool. Hey, here's a pot of money. Can you use it? No, you can't. So it has to be used for that purpose. There are a number of details, both in Texas law, federal law, IRS code, to be kept track of. And without getting into what all of those details are, with very good outside counsel, with our own work, research, careful attention to detail by the trustees. They went through all of the hundreds of pages of documents at incorporation. It has the necessary filings to the IRS, so that it is a tax-exempt entity and it doesn't cause any tax problems to the city, employees, or retirees. It also has what's called a risk pool, which is a Texas law entity. It is what allows you to invest differently than the Texas Public Funds Investment Act, with a potential scope of investment as broad as a pension system, but most of the members have some limits on that. Kelly will talk a little bit about the suggested investment strategy for the city. But you have broad general authority, which you can choose to narrow down in various ways for Amarillo in particular. All of the providers, First Southwest, the outside counsel, Wells Fargo advisors, the auditors, all have Texas offices, and most of them are headquartered in Texas. So we're very familiar with Texas municipalities, Texas law, etc. It is easy to join and simple to maintain. We go through a lot of work to make sure that all of the members have an easy time complying with whatever new things turn up, whether they are federal securities law, whether it's a change in the IRS code. Changes in state law aren't as common, but they still happen, so we're watching for all of those. And it can be operational very quickly after approval. In this case, we are hoping for the beginning of January. We've got a list of who all of the providers are here. Collectively, it's hundreds of billions of dollars of assets under management, advisement, and custody. Strasburger, the individual attorney at Strasburger who did most of the work there, was for 40 years at the IRS, most recently working on exactly the types of rulings that we requested from the IRS.
He got a first and half in the IRS attorney now.
He is exactly what you would expect of someone who worked at the IRS in this for 40 years. He's a very careful, deliberate person who knows the rules, and he keeps track of all of these things. You ask Gus, and he can cite chapter and verse, and paragraphs and paragraphs by memory. So there are potentially alternatives to having an OPEB trust with PEB Trust, one of which is to build your own. Some of the strengths of being with PEB Trust instead are that we take care of all of these details for you, and we've worked frequently with people who are looking for the same type of information, often are in similar situations. So you get clear and detailed reporting on what your investments are. You get, while your investment advisor would be somebody like Wells Fargo, we at First Southwest are also licensed as investment advisors, and this helps us make sure, not just from a compliance standpoint, that everything's being done correctly, but that education makes sense. Reports are not self-promotion, but rather that they are clear and fair and proper benchmarks. Unlike many retirement systems, you can look up the value of your account at any point in time. So if I assume for the moment Amarillo joins, and you're about to come to a commission meeting, and you anticipate the question, what is our account worth today? A few minutes before you come in, you would be able to bring this number up on the computer, and you've got an exact number out to the penny in the market value. And like I say, this often does not happen with retirement systems. So you'll be able to do that. The accounts are insured with this OPEB trust, and in lots of other self-created OPEB trusts, you would find that they wouldn't be insured. It's because of the type of entity that we put these in. I'm sure you're familiar with the FDIC, but Securities Investor Protection Corporation is for brokerage accounts. And so this is sitting as a brokerage account type to provide protection to the city against fraud, misdirection, and a number of other causes. I can provide details on that if you all need. I already talked about, we pay very close attention to the laws. Dean, as I mentioned, is chairman. The majority of the board of PEB Trust is members, and in Dean's case, he joined as a potential member as we were forming this, because it was a chicken and egg problem initially. If we didn't have people who would approve being members yet, then the first board couldn't be composed of current members. It was prospective members. The Dean and Winston at Huntsville both ended up on our board. Huntsville joined a little more than a year ago. We also have Port of Houston on our board now. So some of the other things that happen, your account is your own. It's not pooled with anybody else's, so any other member's investment decision cannot affect you, whether they have very good strategy you don't like, allocations you don't like, or even should anybody ever do anything questionable, though, who would try to dissuade people from inappropriate investments, as probably with the investment consultants. The scope is very broad of what you can invest in: stocks, bonds, exchange-traded funds, mutual funds, several other types of securities. And none of the firms are selling you their house investments. So it's not a Wells Fargo mutual fund. It's not a First Southwest exchange-traded fund. Those are First Southwest. But if we had them. The board's decision was that we couldn't sell them as proprietary investments. And all of the providers have fiduciary duties to employers. So it's a strong duty to do what is to the advantage of the employers, even if we make less money on it, even if for some reason we would really like to do something else. It's a very strong statutory duty to put the interest of the employers first. And so, just the concluding slide on here is a summary of all of these nice different characteristics. And if you decide to join, it can be up and running rather quickly. We've gone through a lot of the administrative details of what the city might invest in, what account numbers would be, all of the forms that have to be filled out, and so on.
Just kind of as a reminder, we had discussions over the summer that how we could begin to pre-fund some of these future obligations. It was set aside roughly 2% of pay in the budget year that we're in today that would begin that pre-funding should you choose to take a vehicle such as this. I think administratively, I think in terms of efficiency, certainly in terms of compliance, taking advantage of this existing group and the people that are involved in it would certainly be in our benefit.
Well, and on top of that, we have a fiduciary responsibility to act for the future of not only employees but for the well-being of the city, because there are a lot of municipalities who are having great problems because they didn't fund the retirement plans for their employees properly. And so we don't want to leave this for another city commission in the future for them to say, well, they should have done something back in 2012, 2013. So I think this is just an important step for this commission to take to ensure that we're not going to be like other cities who are broke because they couldn't meet their commitments on their retirees and pay those benefits. So I think considering this is very healthy for us.
And every day that the decision that Lydia was referring to, every day it's going to get worse, not better.
If you don't pre-fund, yep.
I'm surprised that GASB, whatever the accounting consortium that makes all these rules, I mean, and I know that they're getting pushier and pushier and pushier, but the day could arrive when they say you must.
Well, and that goes back to the history, Jim. When I joined with you in 04, we looked at all this and we said, well, why isn't there a reserve for this? And they said, GASB had just changed the rules allowing for a reserve. I couldn't believe it. I'm out of the car industry. Look what GM went through. Look what others went through. Then they said, now we're getting to the point where we recognize it. We asked how much then the liability was, and they said similar to Arlington. Arlington had studied the demographics, pretty similar to our demographics for employees, and they said there was a $167 million deficit to fund it. That's what it would take to fund it. And we said, well, I thought we had all these reserves. We really didn't have a penny.
Yeah, and there were some places that had earmarked reserves that had never put them in an irrevocable reserve. You're right on. GASB took a long time. They started considering it in the 90s, and it took until 2004 to be approved and then later to be implemented. And GASB is looking at making other changes, probably in the 3 to 4 year timeline, where the unfunded liability for OPEB will move to your balance sheet rather than being footnotes.
It's not going to help many cities.
Well, it'll change the look of everything, but when we had our pension and OPEB seminars, and one of the commissioners was there, the rating agency is already corrected this. Most of the institutional investors already know these numbers. When you start pre-funding, you will get a different discount rate, and you will book a lower number than you do now, and you'll have a lower suggested annual contribution from the actuaries as well. And the exact discount rate will vary depending on how much of that contribution you're making each year. So if making the whole contribution, the discount rate could go from 4 to 7.5%. Making part of the contribution is part of it there. And we think this is very good. Our firm works with rating agencies a lot, and there's more and more rating attention over time, and especially to highly rated entities.
I was going to mention
Rating
our
reports
ratings
and
don't
that.
hurt us.
Yeah.
We just went through a review this year recently, and they did ask.
Mm-hmm. If you backed up about 3 years, it was uncommon to hear comments from rating agencies unless you had like an acknowledged problem, like you were the state of Illinois or somebody with a very well-known problem. And now it's virtually everybody that gets asked about it. There's more and more attention and pressure.
Sometime Mike, President.
I have a couple of questions. Kind of like if you're on the board of your own pension plan at your private firm. Do the commissioners, because we don't use these very, very standard municipal investment, low yield investments, does the commission need like E&O insurance or something like this, or is that part of the PEP Trust and the SIPC?
The PEP Trust Board has its own directors and officers insurance. Now, there is also specific insurance for securities, and should you have money sitting in cash at a bank and CDs, then there's FDIC coverage on that portion of it. The investments for each of the members, like the city, would be determined by the city after consulting with its outside investment consultants. So your allocation in individual investments would be very different than Huntsville's or Port of Houston, for example. You could end up selecting entirely different securities and fairly different allocations.
But you have to show the actuary that your allocation could make the 7.5% discount rate. That's where Kelly comes in.
If I understand maybe the question, because of the risk pool concept, which is set up in the Texas state law, that sets you in a different game as far as the rules for investing those funds. If you stay within that, plus the other protections that are there, you're no longer under the Public Funds Investment Act, but you yet have no additional liability, so everybody is covered.
So it's kind of a safe harbor, or what's the term you use, affirmative defense, that if you're doing all these things, you're probably...
We're going to get quarterly reports, or you're going to get quarterly reports on how the performance is. There's a lot of due diligence.
Yeah. And you can check account values at any time, but quarterly reports and performance and benchmarking.
And that's kind of a segue to what Kelly does for our hospital district and the firefighters' pension plan, and for the hospital district pension plan, the Wells Fargo Outfit Consulting Group does the performance monitoring, and they go to the Amarillo Hospital District Quarterly Board, and they tell them if the money managers are doing a good job or not. And they don't pull any punches when they do it.
Oh, and Wells Fargo had to be approved by the PEP Trust Board to be an available investment consultant. So we went through a whole bunch of diligence on licensing of the firm and the individuals. And we check that periodically as well for the information.
Yes, I find it very, very thorough. So I'm Kelly Vivas. I'm with Wells Fargo out of Fort Worth with Alpha Consulting Group, and as Dean said, we work with the city on lots of different plans. Just to tell you a little bit about what we'll be doing for you, on page 2 in your handout, one of the things that I did touch on, if we sign on with you all, we will be a co-fiduciary as far as the investment advice that we give. So we are on board with you on that. So we are the Alpha Consulting Group. We have together in our group over 75 years of experience working with institutional clients like the city. Roy Brownie and I set up the group back in 1999. We've always been in this business since the early 70s, so he has a lot more experience. And so we've all been working with the city for 20
plus.
So just to give you an idea of what we'll be doing for you, on page 6 are our services. And so what we will help you do with the OPEB Trust is develop an investment policy statement so you all can tell the managers what you are going to invest in, what your goals are. We're working with your actuary on the actual assumption rate that you need to make, and what we'll do is an asset allocation study to make sure that we are offering the investments that can get you to that actual assumption. Then we'll do the search for the managers. Since you're all going to start out funding this, a little bit of time as you go with payroll. You're not dumping a few $1 billion at one time. There'll be a few thousand at a time coming in. We'll probably start off with mutual funds because that's a lot easier to buy a little bit at a time. So that's what we'll be looking at. So we'll do the search for you, then we'll do the quarterly performance monitoring. So that's when you all will see us each quarter. And then trustee education, making sure you all understand what you have. And that is really what our services are. The rest of the piece is just going into more to the services. I know you all have a lot on your agenda, so we won't go through all of this. But any questions about what we will be providing or what we do?
I've got a question for Marcus. I'm on this retirement plan, and so as a city commissioner, we're voting on the vehicle today.
She's on the health.
I'm on the retirement.
Right, but this is nothing. This is no relation to TMRS.
Okay, yeah, okay, house plan. I am on the
You're on the health plan.
Uh-huh.
Will this be funding retiree health plan benefits?
Yes, but not any different for her than anybody else.
I think it's important to note that did not come through commission work. None of us are on this. The commissioner normally would not be.
That's right, I'm on it because
it
of
predates
former life.
her service here.
Right.
Probably don't have a conflict as a matter of law, but you may be more comfortable in public perception of not voting this way.
Okay.
But if you feel strongly about it, you have a moment to think about it, but I don't think you'll have a conflict.
If public perception is at all going to be questioning it all, I would rather just not do it.
When in doubt, recuse.
Exactly.
Mayor, this would be items G and H related.
So we'll pull those out. Who's got the
He does.
I do.
Well, let's just go to it. Well, you can do that.
You can do it and remove it.
I'll read it first and ask.
Yeah, he'll pick up the other two.
Yeah, and I'll say, does anyone ever remove it for separate consideration? You can do that.
Okay, I'll do that. And then
And you can
do the first one, you do the second one.
you can make the motion for those excluded. Yes, we'll go on.
Perfect.
See if there's any other questions.
All right, thank you. Thanks, Marcus.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much.
Item I, dedication and acceptance standards that would point out, if you didn't catch this earlier, all three of those were trying to find the proper right-of-way space. But in these bus stops, we're voting on in accordance with now the multitude of differing regulations that are about that. So all three of those would be.
Is there a taking of private property to do this? You're just finding it in our right of ways.
No, we're getting an easement right to use private property, but none of these were condemned or taken in that.
So okay. Good.
There are places that in the past there was sufficient room within the existing right of ways. Now the requirements for building more, we found enough room to comply.
Most of those are dealing with handicap accessible.
Okay, any questions for today? With that, we'll go up to item number 2, review and discuss the requested changes and amendments to the current existing rotational towing contract. And I think each of you has provided a explanatory memo from Mr. Friga and a draft contract. It is marked to clearly show all of the proposed changes, and then based on this discussion today, if we need to modify or change that, we can. And then bring it back at a later date for consideration.
Yeah, the current contract we have with our towing contractors, why don't we take a minute and introduce ourselves. Jeff, let's start with you.
Jeff Reese here, towing and crushing. Randy Tibbs, towing. David Farrell, Team Miller.
Gina Farrell, Team Miller.
Doug Talby, competition towing.
Ricky Cantu, Ricky's Towing.
Attorney Kincaid with Cantu Towing.
These are all on the towing contract, except actually Katrina's on the contract as Cantu.
I got kicked off.
Yeah.
Hot ball man out. Just kidding.
And then Captain Lancaster administers the program at the police department. We met with the towing companies, I guess, a couple of weeks ago, and I think everybody got to say what they wanted to say, the different changes they wanted to have in the contract. A lot of them, I think, are housekeeping changes. The three significant changes were our current fuel contract, fuel surcharge, has never resulted in a surcharge. Fuel prices go up and they come back down, but they never vary enough that they've ever gotten a fuel surcharge under our current agreement. So the companies have proposed a $10, just a flat $10 fuel surcharge on the ticket. Did I get it right? Okay.
Per tow.
Per tow, yes.
Well, why make it a surcharge? Why not just make it part of the fee?
It has the same effect.
That's what I mean. Because it doesn't
Well, I
vary.
think the surcharge before, though, was based on a change in gas prices, which was volatile, and yet it's proven not to be as volatile, I guess, because it never filed a surcharge.
But this move is $10 per ton, or
Per ton
service, per tow. It's constant.
Yeah.
Well, why not just put it in with the fee? So it'll be $200, but $210.
Well, I'm concerned about that whole situation.
And you're right, Commissioner. And the other major change in it is that they had requested a fee increase. They wanted the fee for an accident to be $200, and then for like a code enforcement tow, a junk car tow, to be $150. Did I get it right?
Supposed to be $175.
Oh, $175. Sorry. So $200 and $175. And so the big changes is they wanted a $200 fee for a wreck, $175 for a code enforcement type tow, and then the $10 fuel charge. On page 7, we reduced the death penalty, the fifth violation, from a 4-year suspension to a 1. We've never given anyone more than a 30-day suspension so far, so it seemed a bit much to have a 4-year suspension. And we also, on page 8, the reinstatement fee was proposed to reduce it from $1,000 to $500. So when a person does get suspended for any of these various reasons, then currently it costs them $1,000 to get back on the contract, and the proposal would be $500. Staff didn't think it was significant because we just don't have that much of it. Did I say anything?
Have we heard from any citizens groups that would oppose this? Are there any that would look at this, scrutinize this? Because last time I thought there was pretty substantial increases, and no one really was much aware. We went up from 85 to 150 a year ago.
Yeah.
Or 2 years ago, a year and a half.
That was in 2011.
Went from 85 to 150, and now they're asking to go to 200.
Captain Lancaster, have you heard anything?
I have had very few calls complaining about the amount. I'd say less than a dozen over the life.
I've had some.
I don't feel hardly.
I may get them more because I'm in the car business, but I've had several people ask about the whole situation. They don't understand it primarily, but.
And I've had some call me about it also.
I can't justify this at all. Not to the people that, there's a huge group of people that we're trying to protect with this. The primary place that I see them getting towed is after they've had an accident. There's not a lot of choice at that point. Unless they make a choice, you got people that are uninformed about this, but I think these are high prices for towing. I'd never pay them in my business, not even close. And I understand it's a little different tow, but this is, I couldn't believe you all gave the rate increase last time. I didn't have the point to say anything at that point, but I sure did now. I think it's...
And it's a little different than a standard tow in that they're supposed to respond during the day within 20 minutes, and then at night within 30 minutes, and they're responsible 24/7 to respond to these things. And our goal is to get the accident, the vehicle out, the street clear, and the officers back in service.
I'd like to know what AAA pays. I'd like to know what insurance companies pay. I'd like to know what a common person pays if they call. Compare that to some of these, because I think it's, I just think it's high.
You get AAA, don't you?
I do the AAA contract. And I don't want to speak unless y'all want me to. I can shed a little light on this for y'all if y'all want me to.
I think we could. I mean, are those reasonable questions or not?
I mean, it's just two different tows, two totally. What I do for AAA, when in 2008 the state changed the rules and came out with a license that you have to obtain to be able to tow. So towing for AAA is called. They would help me out here. Consent. I don't have a consent license. I have an incident management license, which I have to take 8 hours of continuing education every year and pay the fee to renew that license and do the proper training that I have to have. And that's the only way you can respond to an accident on the roadway is with an incident management license. Now, we have to, since we're on the contract, every one of our employees have to have an incident management license. It's drug testing, background testing. It's very strenuous, and the training, and then be ready to go, just like one of our firefighters or one of our police officers. We have to be there within 20 minutes for this contract, which makes it very expensive. Not only that, I mean, it's just...
Well, but it's 2 to 3 times higher than what a person pays if they call it.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, because we can do it out of convenience. When you call me and you're broke down at home, I can show up in an hour, or I can show up in an hour and a half.
I understand there's some difference, but 2 to 3 times higher than what you pay if you call to get a tow truck at your house. I can't. You're going to have to sell me on this, guys.
We're at $70 right now for a private tow.
You want 200 for this. I mean, I just think it's too high. I think we've got to protect the citizens of what they're up against when their back's against the wall. And they've got an accident, got to get out of the street. I think that's what we're doing here.
What happens, though, if it's a service that's covered under your insurance, and the insurance has an allowable of $125? Do you balance bill the citizen, or do you accept what the insurance pays? How does that work?
Insurance, I mean, depends on what kind of insurance you carry.
You can't get your car out unless you pay it.
And, you know...
Your balance bill.
Right.
You can't get your car out, and you get storage right away, and you get all the other things that go on top of this.
And the insurance, I mean, the insurance price difference is massive. I think for consent tow, just me going out, you break down if I consent tow, I believe I'd have to look back at the statute, but I think it's $250,000. We're required on city contract to carry $500,000, plus some other on hook and some other, consent tows. You don't have to have storage lot licenses, things like that.
Well, I agree there's a cost difference between a private tow and one that we force because of an accident, but I just think the differential is too large. That's my opinion.
What is a private tow for AAA?
AAA is $40 right now, but we get $4 a mile every mile we tow. So it can go. I mean, if we tow 5 miles, that turned that tow into $60. So it's just different, but it's just so hard to explain to y'all in such a short time why the price is so different. And the other is, we do have a study. I'm a director with Southwest Tow Operators in the state, and there is a feasibility study coming out through the state that the state paid for, and we've already kind of got wind of what it's going to be, and it's going to be around $350, $400 for a small car, and about $900 for a big truck. And that's just what, how they came out with a private property tow rate schedule. They're going to come out with an incident management tow rate schedule. And it's pretty high, guys. And I know that it's high, but...
Well, I've had people that have had to give just walk away from their car because of the tow bill and the storage after 3 days. They just got to walk away from their car. So maybe I'm bias about this, but I think there's a lot more to it.
We usually have a committee that reviews this thing. Who was in charge of the cities?
Captain Lancaster.
Well, what were the charges for comparable cities?
Oh, that one I haven't done for quite a while.
And in state law, it also, and I printed it off and I forgot to bring it. When municipalities set non-consent tow fee schedules and non-consent rates, they're required by law to do a rate study.
If it's private property tow, not checking that, guys, right before lunch. Not when it's a rotation wrecker service for the city. The Texas Attorney General has an opinion on that. It relies on the Cardinal towing case under Alice. So we'll stand by that. And on a rotational tow contract, a study is not required. It is required if we were to set non-consent tow rates for private property across the city. We are a market participant on a police rotation call.
And you bring up private property. Private property is set at 175 right now. And private property is somebody's parked illegally in a parking lot, and we're getting 175 right now, with only being required so much insurance, not having to have as much. But on incident management tows, which costs us more to do business, we're getting less. Plus, we're paying $16.25 out of that money back to the city. So really, the 150 is now 150 minus $16.25 if we get paid. And just because we do the call, that doesn't mean we're going to get paid on the call. But we're still paying our employees. We're still paying our fuels.
What percentage do you get paid?
Probably 25%.
I didn't hear.
I would bet 25. Would y'all think probably 25%?
Only 25%?
They get paid too?
Yeah.
Get paid?
Get
Yeah.
paid.
So you don't
They don't
give them
have
the car
insurance.
back.
They don't have insurance.
But you don't
They
give
don't
them.
care.
Well, what about when you net it out? You keep the car, so after you sell the car, what do you get out?
Crushing prices.
Crushing prices.
market.
Okay, but I can get $300 out of any car that I
About $300.
just about. Yeah, you get $300, so you've cleared your bill. I mean, I think there's more to this than what we see right here.
Ricky, what do you
Well-
pay for a crush car?
Well, about $300. But what they're not seeing is there's 6 of us on this contract. Cantu Towing brought in $54,000 in sales up to this date to be on this contract. The amount of equipment at the time, we're really not making any money on it on the current
Get off
price.
the contract if you are. I mean, that's not my problem.
I understand that.
That's not my problem. If you can't afford to be in the contract, get off. I'm sorry. I'm trying to protect the people that are out there and have an accident, are stuck in the cold, and they're getting hit for these charges, and I think we better be able to answer that question before we pass any kind of increase. It's my feeling. Sorry.
It is amazing that, and I'm not surprised that you only get paid for maybe 25-30%.
That's not true.
You don't think that's true?
Here's why I don't think it's true. This is my opinion, and maybe you can refute this, and I'm happy to hear it if you can. So you don't get paid, so you keep the car. So you file a lien on the car, and you get the car. People don't get it back. So you may not get paid by the person that tows, but you get the car. They take the car away, and they get the proceeds from the car. Now, after you sort those through, what's your percentage of getting the bill cleared that you initially started? I've gone to get cars out that have been $290 after a day and a half to get a car out. I've gone to get cars out that are $800 because the guy abandons it. We don't hear about it till later. And it's $800. Now, not necessarily from these guys, maybe in a different city. But the fact is the person can't afford it anymore. They abandon the car. They can't pay it. These guys take the lien. They perfect the lien. They sell the car. They get the results of that. And that's that. So I don't think they're getting hurt as bad as what it looks like from this. It's my view. If somebody wants to refute it, please tell me, because I'll listen. But I don't think it's as bad as all that, folks.
Well, it's just not free to babysit that car for 45 days.
I understand that.
I know we sit on it and we get $300 at the end, but I sit on it for 60 days. I have to babysit it, make sure it's in the same condition when it goes to auction. It's just very costly. But I agree. There's some deals that do
I don't
happen.
think it needs to go up. That's my opinion. Somebody convinced me it should.
Mary, you just know too much about cars.
Well, it's facts. This is facts. You can tell me I'm wrong, and I'll back up. I don't think I'm wrong. I I think it's wrong. I mean, I think it's already higher than a kite.
Well, if I can see, is anybody saying the final on this?
This is just
discussion. Okay, because
sure I
this is more complicated than this is more complicated than I realized looking at the bill.
Well, they did last time. I had all these questions last time sitting in the audience, and no one raised a question.
It's not like you to sit there quietly.
He was not mayor yet.
No, as a member of the public.
No, I was beside him. He wasn't quiet.
I think I was poking her. I'm sorry, and I'm ready to listen to this. If you guys can prove to me that there's really a cost,
we could
needs to go up, fine, but I don't see.
Would you like me to get some comparable cities like Lubbock and Albuquerque?
Yeah, I'm worse than that. I'd like to move it down. Sorry. That's just how I am. Sure. I'm tight.
City rotation.
Yeah.
Can we bring you some of our documentation?
I think, if anybody has specific questions, I understand you don't get, but if you were only collecting 25% of your bill, you'd all be out of business. You're getting some compensation back.
We're working on
that card. I know you are. And it's work. And I know it's hard work, and I know you got to respond quick. But the point is,
David had one more thing to say.
Mayor, on the complaints you're getting, are they on the private property side, or are they just on the record prices themselves? Because
what I get is from people that are totally ignorant about this, and they ask me my opinion as in the car business. They can't get their car out of inbound. They've got a huge bill because of impound and their problems, not your problems, but their problems. They can't get their car back. And it's not just the cars that I have, it's other cars. And I think we have to do our due diligence before we approve this, because this affects a lot of people who can't, they can't survive it. They're gone. They're out of a job, they're out of a car, they're out of a whole lot of things. And I think what we're doing with this has more effect than we've considered.
And not necessarily you as the repo man.
Anybody.
Well,
and not necessarily in Amarillo. I think this is something that is. The other thing is that I don't think it's our job to make rules that exceed or less than what the state does. The state's regulating this to the nth degree now. I think we want to mimic whatever they're doing.
So does that mean if the state comes out with a study that says $350, that's where we're going?
The state can't impose that on us.
I'm just asking though if we mimic what they recommend.
No, I'm talking about where we've been too tough on like the 24 months versus 12, and we've been too tough on the 1 year versus 4. I think those things we were too tough on.
Rate.
I think we were too tough on those. The rates are driven by the market too, and the market's different in Amarillo than Austin.
And that's precisely what the Attorney General said. When distinguishing a private property tow, which you can compare from city to city, that's just inequitable. But when a city itself becomes a market participant and says we're going to control towing on wrecks and for code enforcement vehicles, then it's like any other contract. It's a negotiated price, and it's not bound by a market study. This is just like any other set of vendors. We're going out for a contract. We're going to negotiate for the price. As you indicated a while ago, it's a free market. The vendors want to participate or not participate as their own economics indicate. But that's precisely the point, that we are, in this case, a market participant, and we're able to negotiate these prices. We're not bound by a market study.
I would say on the other side of it, too, though, that these guys do a yeoman's effort for us. They go out quickly. They have to respond quickly. They work in the worst conditions. They have to do a lot of things that they're required to do, and they're regulated very, very severely by the state. So I see that side of it, too. The part that concerns me is the dollar amount that we're saying, this is it, folks. You get in a wreck, this is what you're going to be paying. Unless Dad calls and said, no, don't.
Second would be come back and talk about it one more time. Let us double check the private tow market here in town, some of the fleets, let AAA and some of those others, and let's look at some other cities and have those back to you. I think it might also be beneficial to ask the towing companies to prepare something for you that we can distribute that would explain what's occurred since January of 11 to this point to merit the increase. Because if you look at the reason the fuel surcharge has not kicked in is while fuel has definitely yo-yoed, it's gone up, it's gone down. The wholesale price differential on the fuel today from when we put that in to try to help protect them from those those swings is less than 1/10 of a penny. So, I mean, yeah, it's gone up, yes, it's gone down, but if you draw a line from January of 11 till, did you pull November?
Yeah, November.
It's flat, but obviously there are requirements on them that are not on them doing any other type of towing in town. Let's ask them to give us something explaining not what this increase is, but why they need that increase, and they'll have both sets of information.
Jim, the answer, I mean, you said, why not just put it in the price? I agree with that philosophically, but it never goes away. And if fuel prices drop to $2, it's in there forever. And it becomes part of the price. And nobody even identifies, the next commission never identifies that $10 was put in there. So that's the one reason I keep it separate. And it's why I liked, of the things that were done in this year and a half ago, I thought the surcharge is a good compromise to try and let the market. Now, maybe the fuel, the way it's calculated needs to be adjusted. I'm not saying it doesn't. The way we get, cars shipped in, they're constantly changing the way the surcharges are done. But maybe that could be something we could review on a more current basis. Maybe not wait 2 years for that. So I don't know.
Like that golf general users fee, I wish it would have been spelled out so everybody would know what they're paying.
I agree that more information is necessary. I don't know enough about the towing industry to make an informed decision right now, so I think the more information we can get, we can digest it all and be fair about our decision in the future.
Maybe you can change my mind, but
Here again, we did this a year and a half to 2 years ago, whatever it was. There was also a big discussion on the type of equipment that we were going to require. And I can't remember whether that was put into place or there were two call lists. One call list for truck involved wrecks, and then another for vehicle.
To be on the contract, they have to have both sides of that equipment so that they can respond to whatever type of call that is that's coming up. This doesn't change any of those, doesn't add to.
So we're all required to have big equipment.
Yes.
If they're going to be on the list.
Yes.
So that is an additional expense for
Well, and very selfishly, I think that also means we have more companies in town that have that equipment, that if we ever had something terrible happen on I-40,
like the 40-car pilot.
Right, we've got companies in town that have the equipment.
sure, but I don't need to get my car towed tonight.
No. You might get a homework. We will, Dean, if you'll work with...
That's their chance to make a sale, Mayor.
No, there's board hurting. Waiting out in the cold.
Mayor, if we could, that finishes the agenda. If we could have a brief closed session, we'll try to wrap up so that we don't have to bring you back.
Thank you.
Thank you guys for your time.
Thank you, sir.